Welcome to Creative Technology and Design's Epicor ERP Quote to Cash overview. So in this video, we'll walk through a quick workflow showing a lot of the areas and functionality available in Epicor from a user role perspective. So we'll be working off of our Epicor homepage that I've designed here to represent the key roles that will be involved in this exercise we're doing today. So we'll go all the way from sales, creating a quote, generating an order, taking it all the way through production, fulfilling that order, and then sending it out to the customer, all the way through accounting and getting that cash receipt. So we're going to start by creating a quote. So we're going to use our opportunity quote entry screen right here, logged in as my salesperson. So the first thing to do is to create a new record. So I'm just using my hotkeys here to start up those commands. I'm going to look for my customer Addison. So I'm just typing letter A and comes up in the shortcut, retrieves all the information about them. And I just need to hit my hotkey to create a new line and indicate what product we're quoting here. Since we're working in an engineer to order scenario, this is what we call a part on the fly. This is a product that may not be already in my system. It's something that I'm quoting just for them. So we don't know yet if we are going to get this deal, but we have the ability to define the product reference in the description, tell the system what quantity we're expecting to sell, and most importantly, the price associated with it. You can always rearrange your columns here in the grid, save them as your profile, and that way you don't have to drag and drop them every time. But anyway, so we have our price in there now. Our quote is done for $2,000. We can attach documents if we have any supporting information we want to include. But otherwise, it's as simple as just flagging it quoted and generating a quote document. So we're just print previewing it for this exercise. At this point, we could be emailing it right out of the system to the customer, and they'll receive their quote form with the details. So in this case, we've quoted under quote number 1208. So we have a quote, we can get out of there. And still in my sales role, let's say the customer calls back. Now they want an order off of that quote. Can go straight into order entry. And with my hotkeys here, I'm going to call up the quote that I want to create this order from. That was 1208. If I don't know the quote number, I can always load up my search through this button and search for it by customer name. In this case, I'm ready, so I'm just gonna click on create order, and that'll retrieve all the details that were on my quote. I just need to add, some key information like the customer PO reference. So let's say we want to call this ADD 7000, and they want this by the 8th. So we can save our record. It's going to apply those dates to all the lines on the order. I just have one line, so there it goes. And now that we have an order on file, we can print the sales order acknowledgement and submit it to the customer. Of course, you wouldn't probably physically print it. This would go out and be emailed to the right contact on the account, which in this case would be Andrew Addison. So we can close that. And at this point, if the order requires a deposit, you can also process a deposit in our cash receipt process in Epicor, referencing the sales order number. I will walk you through cash receiving later on, so we can revisit that there. So our order is ready to process. We can save and close that record. That order is ready. And now there is demand in the system for us to go build this DSS assembly. So we can close that. And that concludes our sales role. Now let's say we're going to put on our production hat. We can switch over to the production section. And we want to know what there is to make. So we're going to click on our what to make button. Takes me to my planning workbench. And in here, amongst many different products that I need to make, is the one that we just submitted. There is DSS 4000. It's of course sorted by due date. I have several older requests, but you can see the reference there to the order I created, 5676 for Addison Incorporated. So as a production manager, I just need to create the job for that. And I have options on how I want to assign that job number. It can be a sequential. I like to do it with order release because it references the order number as well. And we're just going to click on create job. Now, because we don't have any engineering details yet, in this example, the job is created with all the related details of what we're making it for. This is the make to order, and the order is connected. We also know that it's a production quantity of 1, and the customer requires it by May the 8th. So all of that information flowed through. Now the section here that defines how that product is going to be made, all the engineering details as far as bill of materials, routing details, instructions, everything would be defined at this point by the engineering team or whoever has that responsibility. All I'm going to do right now is bring it over through this get details command, and I'm going to pull it up just from a template I have. So in real life, you could be inputting that from a CAD integration. You could be creating that directly in Epicor by dragging and dropping materials and such. I'm just going to bring it in from a template from an existing revision I had on my engineering database. And I'm going to keep it very simple. I have one step to assemble and several materials there that are required. So now that I have that information, we can say that is ready and released. And I also have data now to schedule it. So I'm just going to schedule it in this backward mode because they need it by the 8th. The system is going through all the algorithms to come up with the dates, and based on the material availability and based on the operations and how long it's going to take, we can start it by the 8th and we'll finish it right on time to send it out to the customer. So now we have a schedule. And of course, this puts the job on the scheduling boards and all the different reports that are available in Epicor. We have a full-fledged job now created and ready to be processed. You may also want to generate a job traveler at this point. It's a barcoded job traveler. You can define what options you want to default here and what you want printed there. And we can preview that, and that can be used by your production team eventually when we start working on it to get materials and also to process it through the production area. So I'm going to minimize that for now. We can close it. We can get out of here too. And we can get out of here too. So as you can see in the production role, there's several different shortcuts I have depending on what information I want to see. If I want to look at shortages, if I want to look at cost information, scheduling boards, they'll all be there. So it just depends on what tools are relevant to the job that I do. Now I also have a purchasing role. That's where we're going through next. So in my purchasing role, I have, of course, different shortcuts relevant to a buyer. And we have a list of our open POs right here. We have some key metrics I want to take a look at. But most importantly, I want to look at what I need to buy. So we can pull up our suggestion list right here. And this is where we want to focus on what materials I need to order. I have them pre-organized or pre-grouped by supplier. So I can see what I need to buy from ABC Electronics, ABC Metals. And as I expand each section, I can get the requirements listed there with the date that I need to order by, quantities, prices, and so on. In this case, I want to buy my DSS components. I have 2 requirements. It's split it in 2 requirements because they're pretty spaced out. So I can put them on the same PO, and it'll notify the supplier that some are required today, some are required later on. This is very, wishful thinking, but we can select what we want to buy from here, can go through the whole list, check things off that we want to purchase, and then we can just generate our POs. So in this case, I do have rights to see all the buyers. In real life, each buyer would just see their own stuff, so this pop-up wouldn't come up normally. So now you can see they dropped off the list of ABC Metals. We can get out of here. And, at that point, a PO is already created. I can refresh my grid right here. And if I look at ABC Electronics, I'm sorry, it was ABC Metals. can see and filter that list, and they're going to be sitting there somewhere. I should probably look for the part too. Yes, there they are. So they're the ones that we just ordered. You can see they've updated on the list in real time. This is my PO number 4524. I can pull it up on purchase order entry just if I want to look at it. Otherwise, it's ready. I don't really need to see it. So I'll just retrieve it for you guys. So 4524. And there we can see ABC Metals. We can see that the order was placed today, and we can also see the material requirements there for 281 pieces for the 2 different delivery dates that we had. So we can always review them there. But anyway, so now we have a PO. We can move on to our inventory role. And in our inventory role, the first action we're going to do is receive that purchase order we just created. So I'm just going to go into my receiving screen. I can maximize that. And I'm just going to create a new receiving pack. This was 4524. Give it a packing zip reference. That's fine. And we're going to do our receiving wizard called mass receipt. We can see the requirements are there. We can maximize it if you want to see it all. There are our 2 quantities, that 2 releases we had in the PO. And we can use a wizard by just using the buttons at the bottom. We can say, yep, they're all physically here. We got all the quantity. So you can see the quantities there. They've all received, and we can send them all to their put away locations. At this point, if you know where you're going to put them away, you can select the actual bin where that's going. So I'm giving it 2 different bins. And at that point, we can also define lots. You can see there's a lot number there. So maybe the first lot is going to A, and this one, yep, that's a new lot, and this one we'll call it. All right. So you can have rules on how you want to implement the lot numbers. If you're using the supplier lot number, you can just scan or type it in. But anyway, we have 2 different lots we're receiving for these components, and now we can just hit process and create our lots. And that will take care of the receiving transaction. So in our receiving transaction, those would be put into inventory. We can see that they have been received to inventory at that point, 2 different lot numbers, 2 different locations. So the material is already put away. We also have in our home screen, reports and screens we can look at, like the lot on hand status. We can refresh it to see the latest information, which in this case was our DSS part. And we can see it's there, DSS and 12. We can see the lot numbers that we received. So you can always consult in real time what is sitting on inventory because we are under the inventory role. So once the material is available, we can go through the processing of our job. So at this point, I'm going to bring up our Epicor MES. I have a shortcut right there. That's our manufacturing execution system. So at this point, I'm wearing the hat of both a material warehouse user and also a production user that is reporting work against that job we created. So in this interface, I would be, on a workstation or on a tablet out on the floor, log in. And the first thing we're going to do is take that material that we purchased and issue it to our job. So we're going to go through the issue material screen. Here, I just need to scan the job number that we created. So I'm just going to scan this job number from my traveler. Just going to copy it for the purpose of our exercise here. That way my scan, I can scan the material that I'm issuing, which in this case was the DSS 1012 that we purchased. We're issuing one of those. And then we just have to tell the system what lot number we're taking that from. So I'm searching, but in real life, or in your case, you would probably be scanning or typing it in. So I'm just typing it in there or scanning it. And that takes care of the traceability of our material. So now the material is issued to the job as soon as I hit OK. So that connects what we had in inventory. It's now been issued to the job, so we have that fully traceable. And now wearing the production user hat, we would go and start our activity to report the labor for our assembly operation. So I'm going to report production time. I can just scan in my job number and also scan in the assembly that I'm working at. In this case, we just have one, so that defaults. And then I just have one process, so I can just select that one. If I had multiple steps, I would just scan in my sequence there from the traveler. And then we just say, okay, that starts our time. And of course, in reality, hours may pass while I'm doing this assembly work. As the user is working on it, they can leave their session. Someone else can come use the workstation. And when they're ready to complete that assembly process and report production as complete, they can come back. Their transaction will be active there, and we can just end the activity. And we report just the quantity completed. We just completed one, automatically flag that process is complete. We can generate tags to identify the material or the finished good that we completed actually. And we just say, okay. And yeah, I just did it in a minute. So of course my efficiency was over limit, so I'll just ignore that. That would send out a notification to my supervisor that I finished it really quickly. So now John J. Labor's done. So if I close out of here, we've gone through all the processes in our job. If we want to verify what we completed in production, I can always go back to my production hat and look at the job tracker. That's the job we did. And we can see that my operation now has a little green check mark and my materials are all issued. That of course would have been, in completing all the issue transactions for the materials, they would look like this with all the different check marks of that being consumed and reflected against the job. So that's just for confirmation so you guys can see that we completed it. And now we can ship the product, so we can send it out to our customer. So going back to my inventory hat, and now we have a transaction there called ship orders. So that'll take me to my customer shipment entry screen where I can send that out to Addison. So we'll create a new pack. Here I can just reference my order number, and that was 5676. So there it is. It recognized that. We can just hit on mass shipment. And it's like a wizard. It'll just retrieve the information on what was supposed to ship on that order. There's our DSS 4000. There's the PO reference. It all automatically comes through. And we can just say, we're going to ship everything they ordered, which was just a quantity of one. And we can see that it's shipping from that job we produced it on. It's coming out of the shipping area. So it's all ready to go. I can give it a weight, or I can have a weight scale connected here. But I'm just, I like to fill that out. Not required, but good information to have. At that point, if you are, integrating with one of the carriers to get tracking information, or you're just retrieving tracking information from the carrier's website, you can input that right here. And we just save our transaction. We can print our packing slip and labels if we need both of them. Just gonna print preview it so you guys can see it. And then the system will just confirm if this packing slip is ready to ship. Is it ready to go out the door? I can say no if it's not been picked up yet, or if it's not, going to be picked up in a little bit. There's our packing slip. Or I can say yes, and that will flag that as shipped and change the status of our packing slip to shipped as well. So at that point, that product is now out the door and on the way to the customer. So at this point, the product is also ready to invoice because this transaction triggers that status. So we can move on to our accounting hat and get that invoiced for our customer. So we can go into AR invoice entry. And all our accounting transactions start with a group. So we'll just call this 0506 for today's date. And there's a new batch. So to invoice at this point, we would just use a wizard called get shipments. And here we can just hit select all, and it would retrieve all the shipments that are ready to be processed on the invoice side. You can also do a manual selection or do pre-filtering. Just gonna keep it simple and say select all. And we can say yes to that. So now it's gonna look at all the queue of the ready to invoice shipments, and it's gonna generate the appropriate invoices. So it created 3. And we'll get a list right here as soon as it's done. We had some older shipments there from a few days ago, and the one that we just created is this one, 10256. You can see by today's date and the order reference, so it's all flowing along. From here, we can, of course, print the invoices or email them to the customer. Remember, every time we call the print command, it's not necessarily printing so much as it is emailing, keeping up with modern times. So we'll print preview them so you can see how they look and how the customer would receive them. So there's the one that we generated for the order that we've been processing. It's for Addison. You can see the PO reference there. All the details came through. There's our DSS 4000 or $2,000. And now it's on the way to the customer with a due date. Now at this point, if you had processed a deposit, the balance would be reflected accordingly just on the amount that is due. So the system does keep track of that. If you did receive, 50% of the order, we would just be invoicing them for the rest. So that wouldn't be a problem. Now we can process our batch by posting it. So this posts our transactions to the general ledger. This is something that happens with all accounting activity. So we'll post it, and that finalizes our invoicing process. We can close out of here. We can close this window as well. And still in our accounting role, we can now go through the cash receipt. And we'll also create a batch for today and tell the system what bank account we're receiving that payment in. Could be a check, could be ACH, EFT, whatever payment method you're using. And I'm going to maximize it. And now we're going to capture our AR receipt. So I'm just going to do a new invoice payment. But you can see you have an option there for new deposit payment. So if you were doing a deposit back in, the beginning of our process, once we created our order, when you're doing a deposit, that's where you link it to the sales order because there's no invoice yet necessarily. So that's how it keeps that balance connected. In this case, we're just going to do an invoice payment. We just give it a check reference of the check we received. That's for $2,000. And if we know the invoice number, we can just type it. I've already forgotten it, so I'm just going to search for it. And I search by clicking those dark buttons. Just look for the latest one for Addison. There it is, 10256 with today's date. And it'll allocate those $2,000 to the invoice that I'm referencing. So it's applied it. And if we want to verify that, we can go to our allocate tab, and we can see that there just to validate. But that's how simple. We can tie it to the invoice reference. Now, just like with any other transaction, we can post it to the general ledger, and that completes that activity. So we can close out of there. And that's kind of taking us through our quote to cash. So of course, there are other transactions that can happen. We can have our AP activity being processed there under the accounting hat. You can have different tabs or different roles here. If you have your AR clerk and your AP clerk, I've just kept them in the same tab for demonstration purposes, but it's all being done right from our home screen. So the usability for each user is meant to be simple, so they only have the shortcuts that they need on the daily basis there, with quick visibility to any key performance indicators they may want, as well as any key data sets they want to be able to search through real quick right from their home screen. So we have our list of invoices here, and that's different by role. You can also check out our finance tab and different transactions that take place there. But Hopefully this had shed some light into the navigation and just a high-level overview of what Epicor can do, fully embedded system. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to your customer account manager or your territory manager, and we'll be glad to help. Thank you for watching.